Well, a very good morning to all my fellow educators in Saudi Arabia this morning. This is the third day, as Mr. Badri mentioned, that on the using modular learning design to empower English language teachers. Our session today, I brought it down to only two for a reason. So we're going to only be working on developing an active learning plan and creating an assessment plan for MLD. The reason is we have only had 6 hours together, 4 in the previous 2 days and 2 today, and we need 60 hours. And 60 times 60 times 60 because we're always learning. So today I'm going to start by going into developing an active learning plan, but what we need to start is with a little bit of review from yesterday. Here is the review. What is called a learning experience cannot happen unless we process information. So you can be reading a book, right? Has it ever happened to you, whether it's English, Arabic, or any other language you're fluent in? You can be reading a book. After a while, you might notice that your eyes are still reading, but your mind is somewhere else. This is a natural phenomena in us human beings. Our minds wander. So the time your mind is wandering, even though your eyes are still reading, you are not processing information, therefore you are not getting a learning experience. A learning experience, yes, a learning experience needs information. For example, when we are reading, it's information. When we are hearing something, it's information. When we are seeing something, whether a picture or a video or real live trip to the zoo, all of this is information. In our present 21st century, what has changed is that the information now can be seen through technology. 200 years ago, you had to be there. If you weren't there, you didn't see it. Then came the camera. The camera recorded something, then you can see it. Then came the video camera, and today we have the smartphone. The same thing with hearing. Today, technology allows us to hear anything even though we're not there. And today, technology allows us to read anything without having to go and get a book. But as human beings, we also stored information. So this is information. But if our mind does not do anything with the information, it's worthless. For example, you can be listening, as I said, to the car radio, but your mind is somewhere else. So your brain is not processing the information. It doesn't matter if you listen to 1 hour of Chinese a day. It doesn't matter if the student is listening to the teacher. If the student's brain is not doing anything with the listening, nothing is happening to create a learning experience. So let's go back and review the processes. There are many. We'll just mention a few. For example, your brain can compare information. Your brain can contrast information. Your brain can find a pattern. Your brain can classify information. Your brain can define. Your brain can predict. Your brain can refer. Every time you use he, she, we, etc., your brain is taking that word he and referring it to something. Your brain can find the effect of a cause. Your brain can do reasoning. Your brain can find flaws. Your brain can infer. Your brain can conclude. There are more than 250 of these. This is the most important part of the learning, processing the information. Now we come to the part that is called communication response. We human beings can only communicate our responses by talking or taking an action or providing an image by drawing, showing, or getting something to show, or writing. There is nothing else we can do. This is the limit of our physical ability. But why is this important? Because when we say active learning for our students, we mean that all the students are communicating their responses around the same time. Yes, all of them can write at the same time. All of them can draw at the same time. But the problem with talking and demonstrating, we need management. How do we get 30 students to talk at the same time? How do we get 30 students to demonstrate an action at the same time? This is where we need management, and today, fortunately, we have technology as well. So let's now go back and review the tool that we talked about yesterday. Every tool, so let's go back here. What do we need? We need information, we need process, and we need communication response. So in order to develop any tool for learning or assessment, any tool at all, we need to say, what do we want the student's brain to be doing? Do we want the student's brain to be comparing? Or do we want the student's brain to be identifying? Or do we want the student's brain to be defining? Or do we want the student's brain to be classifying? If we don't know what the exact process is, forget it. We cannot design a tool to help the student process the information. Next, we need to process information. So in other words, when we decide that the student is going to classify or define or compare or find a pattern or find the characters, whatever, we're going to say, yeah, but from which information? Well, obviously, the information can be read or seen or heard. Now, heard can be the teacher producing the audio or a technology producing the audio. It is also possible, as the students get better, that we don't just use a single source. We can use reading with seeing. We can use hearing with seeing or reading. So the tool starts to get more elaborate because the student's brain is going to be classifying information from what they read, what they see, and what they hear at the same time. These are not separate lessons or tools. Now comes the part of the tool, okay, the student matched or the student classified. How does the student communicate actively? And so we know that the student's brain is not wandering. They need to take an active action. They can write, they can talk, they can take an action, they can draw. That's the limit of human beings. So we're going to call this the active part. This is the problem with management. If we have 30 students online or 30 students in the classroom, how do we manage their communication response? And finally, as we said yesterday, our instructions should not only be for the students. When we write instructions, it is for us, for fellow teachers, for administration, for supervisors, and for other teachers around the world. Because every time you write instructions, there is another teacher in the world who could read your instruction and go like, what does this person mean? So this is the tool. What are you going to do? Well, first, you need to start to look at tools in order to become familiar with them. And then at some point, you will become a person who develops your own tools, okay? Now, let's go back to the MLD structure. We said that in order to help the students learn, we need to admit and say, what will the student be able to do at the end of the period? So every time you have an objective, and this is the objective, what does the objective start with? Do you remember? Every objective starts with a processing verb, such as classify, define, etc. If you have an objective, you can use the objective to design the focal point for the end of the period first. So remember, you're not in the classroom. You are still in the designing stages. When you design the final tool first, it allows you and everybody to see, how will this lesson end? How will it end? Not what will you do, how will it end? If you have the design for 4 periods a week or 2 periods a week or 5 periods a week, this is just a calendar. Then it is easier to design the learning. Now we're going to do today to show you a complete design for 2 levels, one in the middle school and one in the high school, from the opening to the focal point to the assessment. All right? Now, excuse me. Let's develop an active learning plan. What do we need? We need, this is the way we think, we need to design the focal point first. Once we design the tool for that, based on the objective, we know how the lesson is going to end. Then we design the opening, then we design the learning, but when we go into the classroom, we start from here and we end here. But before the classroom, we design this first, then we design this second, then we design this third. So when we go into the classroom, we do this one first, this one second, this one third. Before we go into the classroom, when we're designing, we do the focal point first, the opening second, and the learning third. Let's now look at, let me erase all this, to show you how it works, okay? Now, in your schools, each learning session is about 40 minutes long. This is the time we've got. So what do we need first? We need an opening task. So we need to develop the tool for the task or use a tool from before. So today with the 2 demo lessons, I'm going to show you a couple of tools. But remember, we can make 100 different tools. And by the way, when we go a little further today, I will give you the link to the YouTube where we have several tools for opening a language lesson. Then we need to give them a learning task. So this was the opening. The opening is usually around 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 6 minutes. You can call it warm-up, but warm-up does not mean the teacher talking and one student talking. The opening task has to reach all the 30 students. Then we have the tool for designing the first part of the learning. Once the students do this, we give them feedback by them checking their learning. But is one tool enough to learn? Absolutely not. We might need another task to follow this green one for learning. So this task is immediately connected to the previous one. And you will see that in the demo. After the students do this, we check their learning again. Then we do a third task. Now you might ask me, how many tasks? Well, that is not an easy question to answer with one answer. It depends on how much time have we got. So if the opening is 5 minutes and the focal point is 10 minutes, how much time have we got for the learning? We've got only 25 minutes for the learning. So this learning task might be 5 minutes. This learning task might be 7 minutes. This learning task might be 10 minutes, etc. Now, when I say 5 and 7 and 10, don't forget that there is also the check your learning, which is integrated into it. Now, it might be 3 tasks, it might be 5, it might be 2, but it's never 1. One task for learning is an activity, not a learning task. Now look at the interesting part here, okay? This is going to be the interesting part. Interaction task. Call it group work if you will, but I'm not looking at group work. I am looking at interaction. If our students are learning language and literacy, are they always going to interact with the teacher or with other people? So because the time is very short, only 25 minutes, I suggest that there be at least one interaction task every 25 minutes of learning. Remember, 5 minutes to open, 25 minutes to learn, 10 minutes to find out if they have learned. Now, we said 10 minutes. It can be 5, and it can be 12, and it can be 15. It depends on the lesson. So the traditional P, 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 this is the traditional learning, present, practice, produce, is not good for language learning because present means the teacher will be speaking for 20 minutes or 10 minutes. But remember, if it's only the teacher presenting, that doesn't mean all the students' attention is high. This one is the model of the scaffold, if you've ever heard that term. Scaffold means we break the objective, which is, let's say, like classify, if you remember from yesterday and the day before, we break the classify at the end into smaller abilities so that the student learns to define, then to compare and contrast, then to match with the groups, which leads to classification. So the students interact in pairs or small groups. I will show you that. And finally, we have the focal point task. Now, we can make the interaction task the focal point and then send the paper focal point home for an assignment. I'm going to give you a word here for this model, okay? Look at the word that's going to come up here. Incremental learning experiences. If you want the students to be able to do this focal point at the end of the class session of 25 minutes of learning, you need to break the experiences into smaller experiences in order for them to learn. Why? Because in the traditional PPP, by the time the teacher finishes presenting and the teacher asks, I'm talking about the classical, okay? The conventional. Do you understand? And maybe 3 or 4 students will say yes. And some students will say yes because what are they going to do? They will say yes and try to see what will happen next. But in this system, let's say in 5 minutes, you can tell how many of the 30 students did not get this 5 minutes. So it's easier to modify. That's when we say check your learning. And of course, we're going to demonstrate all of this on 2 pages from 2 different books that you are actually using right now. So one more time, what does your lesson plan look like? What does the yellow and blue look like? It looks like this: opening, learning, focal point, which looks like this: opening task. Who's doing the work in the opening task? The teacher or the student? It has to be the students. Who is doing the learning task? The teacher or the student? The student has to be doing it. The teacher now, if you've used that word before, facilitator, this is the true meaning of facilitator. The student is doing the learning task. You are helping them by designing it for them and then going around and making sure that they are on track. Okay? This is the model that you need. Now, let's go to the book. Here's my question. What are they supposed to learn that will help them develop their language and literacy? Every book has words, every book has details, every book has sentences, every book has text that the students can hear, speak, read, and write. There is nothing new. Any new book will have words, details, sentences, text that the students will hear, speak from, read, and write from. There is nothing else. The question for us is this one. What will the student's brain do as they hear, as they speak, as they read, and as they write? This is the learning part. Because once we activate the brain will never forget. But if the brain memorizes, at some point the brain can forget. Now, if you go to the website of CEL, www.cel.edu.sa, we have models of this lesson plan for almost every I can statement. So you can find the I can statements here, and you can find the lesson plans here. But these are generic, which means that they are not for the book. They are a model of thinking. And that's not easy. That's why I said, unfortunately, you have 6 hours. We need 60 or maybe 600. The idea is that once you go through an experience and you read this, it makes meaning. If you read this by itself right now, it looks meaningless. I will show you. I'm going to break it into smaller pieces so that you can see the bigger font and writing. Now, our question is, what is the learner going to be able to do by the end of the period that she or he was not able to do before the end of the period? So we look for the I can statement. Now, if you look at the codes when you go on the website, W means that the I can is for writing. 5 means this is the level of the I can, which means there is a 6, which is a higher, and there is a 4, which is a lower. The S stands for sentence. Now, if you see W5W, it means it's for writing. The level is at 5, but it's for words. If you see W5D, it means it's for writing. The level is at 5, and it's for details. If you see T, it means it's for text. All right? So, what do you think the students are going to do here? They are going to write sentences at the 5th level. I can produce a printed compound sentence made up of 4 to 6 details in which each part of the sentence is an opinion or a fact or a cause or an effect or a comparison or contrast or explanation, etc. Now, I put etc. here because you remember we have 250. Now, the detail of each is between 1 and 5 words. Where do we know if the student is going to be writing an opinion or a fact or a cause? It's from the book. This is when we analyze the book, as I will show you after I take you through what the active learning plan looks like. Now let's continue. We put the I can statement. Now remember the opening. We need to create a task. What is the most important thing in the task? It's the instructions. What are we going to tell the students? Read the 4 sentences I am going to project on the screen. So what will the students be doing? Will they be seeing or reading? They will be reading because you said, read the 4 sentences that I am going to project on the screen. Now, if it's not on the screen, you can say, read the 4 sentences on the handout I gave you. Or you can say, read the 4 sentences in your book on page 72. Each sentence is made up of 2 sentences. Underline the 2 parts and decide which 3 are the same, which 3 of the 4 sentences are the same in thought expressed. In pairs, tell each other which sentences you think are the same and why they are the same. This is called management here. Remember to use your pair voice when you're talking to each other. This is management. So now we have 30 students talking to each other in pairs, but using their pair voice. This is the opening task. Now, in the conventional or the traditional way of writing the lesson plan, many teachers used to write in the 3rd person, which means it looks something like this. Have the students read the sentences on the screen. Ask the students to underline the 2 parts. Ask the students to tell each other. If you write in the 3rd person, you are not thinking of the students. If I want to give you some good advice today, start writing your lesson plan in instructions that are directed to the student. Because now you are thinking about the students, about the management, and about everything. But as I told you yesterday, it's not easy to write a good instruction the first time. It will take time. So if I ever work with you again and I tell you, change this, it doesn't mean I don't like your instruction. It simply means we're improving it. I improve my instructions, you improve your instructions. Let's continue. Now you tell the students, read the list of sentences you were given and underline the 2 parts. Right next to each underlined part, opinion, fact, compare, contrast. Remember, this is generic. It's not for any book. It's just a way of thinking. Now we go to the next task. Look at each picture and set of words I'm going to project on the screen. Form several details for each question word. So this lesson plan is for this I can. It doesn't make any sense the first time you look at it because it's a lot of information. Therefore, this is why I'm going to keep suggesting that go to the YouTube channel and see a live lesson. Okay? Now, go to the focal point, and we even have focal point tools. You can see them here. This is a focal point tool for writing at level 5 for sentences. You can find that and you can use that as a focal point for that I can statement. It sounds a lot, doesn't it? It goes like, oh my God, I will just open the book and ask the students questions and hope that they will learn. No, this is difficult because it has taken many, many years of experience to reach this level. So how do we make it easy? Let's go for watch the videos for some of the units in your books. Get the experience. Once you get the experience, this starts to make more sense, okay? Now I'd like to show you a model. This is from your books. Let's look at it. It has a title, it has pictures, It has more pictures. Next to each picture, there is some writing. So our biggest question is, what is the student going to be able to do? I mean, okay, here are 2 pages from the book. Ask this question: what are we going to learn and be able to do in this lesson? And that's not an easy answer. So let's look at how we design this. In listening, if you want to stop at listening, if you want to stop, you can say, I can hear a sentence made up of 3 to 5 details and tell. Remember, tell does not mean speak. It means your mind can process the sentence and know if it's a fact. If you want them to speak, we will use this as part of the learning, but now your objective becomes produce orally a sentence made up of 3 to 5 details that expresses a fact. If you want them to write, you can say produce a sentence in writing made up of 3 to 5 details that expresses a fact. Now, everybody, if you choose this, that doesn't mean you have 3 objectives. This becomes your final objective, and you use these as part of your learning process. Remember, if your students are good enough, you stop the lesson in 40 minutes here, but you do these as part of the learning task. But if your students are not good at writing yet, you might put this as the objective and use this as part of the learning. If your students are really low level, you might put only this as the objective for this period, and this for a second period, and this for a third period. It's all a matter of ability. Just because they can hear it and understand it doesn't mean they can speak it and write it. But if they learn to listen to it very well, the speaking and writing part will become easier. So these are the I cans. Okay? Now, you can use these I cans in almost every lesson. But here is the big question for all of us today. Do you see that we said, and tell if the sentence is a fact? So in every book, on all the pages, there will be different ways to make facts. Let's see. Today we are going to learn frequency words for actions, like the word regularly, frequently, normally, hardly ever, never, sometimes, seldom, often, always, rarely, in sentences to present a fact. So for example, if you say something like, I frequently play tennis, that's not an opinion, that's a fact. That is a fact, okay? So yes, it is about frequency adverbs. But why are we learning frequency adverbs? Not to make sentences, but to make sentences that are facts. So now we've started to see what those 2 pages are about. And you decide. Your children, your students are not too good, you might stop here. If your students are good, you might do listening and speaking. If your students are really good, you might do writing, but use the listening and speaking as part of the learning. Now, do you remember how we start? There must be an opening task. There must be an opening task. I would like to remind you from yesterday and the day before, what are the most important factors of an opening task? Number 1, heighten the attention. If you say listen carefully, read carefully, look carefully, carefully, it doesn't mean everybody's attention is high. So what we do as educators, we design the task to make the students' attention high. Number 2, the students, when they come into the classroom, they were speaking Arabic. So we need to do code switching for them, which means make the movement from first language to English faster. That's called code switching. 3, you can write the objective on the board, but most people cannot read it and most people cannot understand it. But if we put the objective into the opening task so they can experience it, they will know which direction they are going. All right? Now, if you have a pencil and paper next to you, I prefer that all of you write the numbers of these questions in the order you hear them. Are you able to write the number of the question that you heard without listening to the question and reading it? You're not able to, right? Because all of them start with how to read the whole thing. So if you have to hear the question and you have to read the question in order to write the number on your paper, I am forcing your mind to switch from the native language to the target language. And you can do this in any language, not just in English. So if you have a pencil and paper, please write the numbers of these questions in the order you hear them. How much money do you spend a week? So you will probably write the number, you will probably write the number 3 on your paper, right? Okay? So please do that. How often do you exercise? How many hours a day do you watch TV? How many hours a day do you sleep? How much time do you spend on the internet? How often do you go shopping? How long do you talk on the phone every day? Now, the fourth part, I mentioned heightened attention, code switching, sense of direction. But can everybody in the class do this or just the people who know English? If you design the opening task so that only 3 or 4 can do it, then it's not a good opening task. The opening task should be involve all the students. How do you know that they are active? You look at them and you see that they are writing. If they are writing the numbers, it means that they are listening. Are you interested in right or wrong answer in the opening task? No. The most important thing is that everyone is active. Now, this is what the students saw, but always prepare your sentences or the order on a separate sheet of paper like me, because we don't want the teachers to go like, how often do you exercise? How long do you talk on the phone? Remember, we are under a lot of stress. This thing is not good, and we do not want to mistakenly say the same sentence twice. We can say the same sentence twice deliberately, but not mistakenly, okay? All right. How long did this take? A couple of minutes. Now, you can show them the order. Remember I said, so when you go to the YouTube channel, you can see that this slide is for the teacher. Let's look at the analysis. Okay. This is in the order that you're going to read them. So you're going to read this first, which is number 3. You're going to read this second. It's up to you. Now, these are the instructions you will give the student. These are the instructions you will give the student. So now you started to notice that your lesson plan and your material presentation are the same. When you write your instructions in direct speech for the students, you are thinking of them. You are creating the management. Did you say, listen to me? Not necessary. What do I want them to do? I want them to write the number of the question you hear. I do not need to say, listen carefully at the beginning. Why? Look at us human beings. We are listening, then our attention drops. We are listening, then our attention drops. If you start your instruction with too much unnecessary talk, and then the action comes here, by the time you reach the what you want them to do, the student's attention has dropped. Start your instruction. Write the number of the question you hear in the order you hear. We don't need to say, listen carefully to the questions I am going to read you, because there is no action there. The action is write the number in the order you hear them. Now here, you read these questions to the students, but you don't say the numbers. And the students will write the number of each question in the order that they heard them. Does this heighten their attention? Does this tell them what they're going to learn? Does this do code switching? And can everybody do it? That's the important thing. Now, let's go to the learning task 1. You remember I put green, blue, green, blue, green, blue, and interaction? This is the first green. What did we tell the students to do? Underline the detail that follows each question words or word that are in the box. Let's do this one. This is the question word that is in the box. So underline the detail that follows this question word, then write what or action. Okay? This is the detail. How many what? Hours a day. So this is a what and not a question. Sorry, an action. How many what? Hours a day. It's not how many hours. How many hours is not the same as how many hours a day. The tendency of us to accept the students just saying hours should stop. The students should say or underline the complete detail. Can you see the example? All right. You do this now. All right? So, how long? This is the question word. What is it followed with? Underline it and then say action or what? How long? Is there a what? Or is there an action? Do talk. The you is not part of it. How long? Do talk. So the action is do talk. Now, I would like you, so this was a demo for the students. The students are learning the tool here. Now, you project this on the screen and you tell them to do the same thing. This is called on your own, all right? On your own. Underline the detail that follows the question words, and then right above each detail, what or action. So let me give you around 20 seconds to read and think about these, as many of these as possible. What is the teacher doing here? The teacher is going around and the teacher is looking at if each student from the 30 or 20 or 40 are underlining the detail and are writing what or action above that detail. Now, if the students are new, you might put one, then the second, not all of them together, okay? Is this a test or is this a learning? Therefore, mistakes are allowed because it's learning. When they finish, how do you give them feedback? You say, check your answers. Do you have to go around and ask only 2 or 3 people? Or can you put this on the screen and then walk around and make sure that the students are checking what they did. So how much, is this an action or a what? Okay, it's a what. How much time? What? How often do you exercise? That's an action. How often do you go? Action. How many hours? I don't know why I missed that. How many hours a day? That's a what. How frequently does John exercise? That's an action. How long does Josh spend playing video games? So this is just the first task. Now, let's go to the second task. Read the instructions. Notice now, all of these are coming from the books. We did not invent them. Find an action in the text and underline it. Then write a question for each of the question words in the box using the action. I'm sorry, I think something is missing here. Oh, there it is. Okay. There we are. So let's go back here. Let's then demonstrate it for the students like this. Find an action. He works out. Again, I'm sorry, it's moving around. I don't know why, but it's like this. This is the action, not he. Okay? What's the action? Works out, which is another word for exercise. When people go to the gym, they work out. Good. Now, what do we need to do? We need to write a question for this action using some of these. Let's look at the example. How long does he work out at the gym? You see the action? How much time does he spend at the gym? And how many days a week does he work out at the gym? Where did this come from? From what they did before. Okay? So now what we're looking at is how long followed by an action, how much followed by a time, how many followed by a what. This will help the students to build what we call the mental process of the mental rule of doing this. Now, we are going to find another action. Again, I'm sorry this thing's moved around. It should be runs, okay? All right, so now we have the word run. How long, what are you doing? You are helping the students learn how to do it. You can be talking to 2 or 3 or 4 or by yourself, it doesn't matter. You're helping the students learn how to do it, okay? Now, once you are satisfied that they can do this, you tell them, now find an action in the text, underline it, write a question for each of the words, and they can continue with the other verbs. But this is on their own. Now the teacher is walking around to make sure that the students are doing this. Now, if you might say, oh, this is too easy for my students or too difficult for my students, this is just one lesson in grade 8, assuming that the students have learned English from grade 4. But remember what we said yesterday. It's not the text that is the level. It's what the students can do. Now, after they finish, what are we going to tell them? Check your answer. So with the word here should be for plays, action, goes, rock climbing, and what we have here is how long does he play tennis? How much time does he spend playing tennis? How many days a week does he play tennis? The students are doing this not from a full page, but from just 3 lines. Okay? Now, if the students have mastered this, we are going to go to interaction. You remember, in interaction, the students are going to sit in pairs, and one of you say a question using the words from the screen, The other, please reply. Switch when you finish. I will show you the tool on the next slide, everybody, okay? So we have all the verbs, we have all the question words, and we want one of them to say a question word, and the other will just reply from their own experience. It looks something like this. How many days a week do you play tennis? The other one would say 2 days a week. And when they finish, they can switch. So now the whole class is sitting in pairs, interacting with this one. What is the problem? What do you think the problem is going to be? As I said, the first 2 days, number one, the students need to learn the tool first before you use it in the classroom. Don't go into the class and try to do this. It won't work. So what we normally do is we help the students learn the tool first with easy words. Once they learn the tool, can we use this tool on many other pages or not? Let's look at how to learn the tool. The question words are on the screen. I don't know why I did this one. What am I supposed to say? Okay. The question words are on the screen. The verbs are on the screen. Now let's look at the process. The students are sitting in pairs, A and B. Preferably, the books are closed. Why? Because we want their eyes to focus on the screen. Now, student A will say a question using the question words from here, and student B will, will reply, I missed that for some reason, please fix it, will reply in a low voice. All right? Then, when they switch, or they continue asking, how often do you go? Look at this. How often do you go? Not all the students will be asking the same questions. So in the classroom, let's say you have 30, it means you have 15 pairs. The 15 pairs are working and you are a facilitator. So this student is asking the student, how often do you go rock climbing? This student is asking this student, how many days do you take for a vacation a year? This student is asking, how many hours do you spend at the mall? This student is asking, how frequently do you check your mobile phone? And each student is answering differently. I rarely go rock climbing. I take 20 days of, I spend 2 hours, I check it 10 times. This tool to be learned might take 15 to 20 minutes. But once the tool is learned, you can reuse the tool for other learning. So now, let's go back to the interaction, okay? You're telling the students, look at the screen, you learned the tool, look at the screen, and in pairs, one of you say a question using these words, and the other please reply. Switch when you finish. Now, you go to the focal point. Let's look at the focal point, everybody. Can you give them this to write or not? Okay, let's see. They can take this home. They can do it in the classroom. And if your students are not good enough to produce this, then you might want to put this on the board to help them. Where one student will ask the question for this, the other student will reply for this. Now let's see. How many? For the student to answer, I play tennis one or two times a year, how many what? How often? So this is the focal point. The whole idea is you want to get the students to get here by the end of the lesson, okay? And then you can tell them to check their answers. How many times a year do you play tennis? How often do you buy something from the mall? How frequently do you check your phone for messages, etc.? This is the focal point, and we just designed a complete lesson for which grade? Let's look at it again. Okay. For the people using this book. So in the end, notice, these are just comprehension questions. But did we do listening and speaking? Did we do listening and speaking? Let's see. All right? Sorry, excuse me. Is this listening and speaking or not? One person is speaking with a question, another person is listening. Then when they switch, this person will speak and this person will listen. It's not a big deal. It's just how much, how many, how often, how long, how frequently. And all of these verbs came from the actual stories that they are reading. All right? Okay. Now, if you want to see this lesson and other lessons like it, don't forget to go to this YouTube channel and you can get samples for each grade level for the first unit. We need to do more, I know, but time is not available every day. All right. Now let's go to a second level. Are you ready for the second level? Okay. This is from grades 10, 11, and 12. It's actually Mega Goal 3, so that means it's grade 11 because Mega Goal 1 and 2 is for grade 10. It's grade 11, Unit 1, and the title is Connected by Technology. These are pages from the first two pages in the book. Let's analyze those pages. The pages are 6 and 7. What does it have? Let's see. 1, 2, 3. It has 3 texts for reading. But what is the topic? Oh, about personal characteristic and information. Good. Now let's look at the features of the text. Each text is a single paragraph, but it's autobiographical, which means that the person is talking about themselves. Each text is about 122 words. Most of the sentences are simple sentence structure. We do have some compound sentences, and the details, unfortunately, can reach up to 15 words for a single detail. Now, let's go to the sentences. What will the sentences express? That talk about personality and that talk about likes and dislikes. So what do we need to learn? We need to learn preferences and personality words. We need to learn present perfect verbs. We need to learn some metaphors. And we need to learn how to find the details to compare and a couple of idioms. What is the focal point tool? If you go to the website, you will find that the focal point tool is Mega Goal Book 3, Unit 1, Lesson 1. That means that tool was designed for the focal point for this. Now, let's look again at what they will learn. They can find sentences in any similar texts that talk about personality and that talk about likes and dislikes. And they can use these sentences to infer about a person. Now we go to the list of the I cans to find the most suitable I can for this one, and we write it. Let's see. Even though the sentences are in a text, but we are focusing on the sentence and not the whole text. I can read a printed compound sentence made up of 4 to 6 details and know which part of the sentence is an opinion, a fact, a cause, an effect, a comparison, contrast, explanation, inference, etc. But for this lesson, we are going to focus on inference, fact, and opinion. All right? Now, how does the lesson work? Do you remember? There is an opening task. There are learning tasks in green. There is check your learning, and there is the focal point. This is the lesson plan. Do you remember what I told you? Start writing your lesson plan as if you are talking to the students through instructions. Listen to each sentence and write its number. Write what meaning your mind makes next to each sentence. Okay. Write the details. Find and mark. What is, write the letter, etc. But this is too much information. So now we're going to show you the lesson, which is a lesson plan and a PowerPoint presentation at the same time. By the way, again, for the opening task, we can design hundreds, not just one model. Today, I'm just showing you one easy model, but you can design 100 different models. What is the most important thing in the opening? Number one, heightened attention. Number two, code switching from first language to second language. Number three, it tells you where we are going today, what the objective is going to be, not through talking, but through an experience. And number four, all the students can do it, not only the 3 students who know English. That's the important part, okay? Now, if you want to see some more tools for helping students to open a language lesson, go to this YouTube, in the YouTube channel. It's, I think there's 4 or 5 tools to help the students start opening the lesson, okay? Now, what's the opening task? Listen to each sentence and write its number in the order you heard them. I use the same tool, all right? This is what the students will see. Listen to each sentence and write its number in the order you hear them. Do you have a pencil and paper? I am going to read these sentences in a certain order, and I would like you to just write the number on your paper. Now, why did we say write the number and not the sentence? Because this is the opening task. It should not take very long. Not everybody can copy and look. It will take 15 minutes to copy all the sentences. That's why sometimes we go, just write the number, okay? But can you write the number if you don't hear and read? So notice the tool. There is a hearing input. There is a reading input. And the brain will recognize which sentence they heard, and they will write the number, and this is the instruction. So let's start. Please write the numbers. One of my favorite things to do is wake up really early. Write the number. I am obsessed with technology and media. We spend hours talking and laughing. I'm down to earth. I am very spontaneous. He loves spending time on the computer. I love to do new things. Strategy here is that if the students are writing the numbers in the correct order, these words and sentences are becoming familiar before we do something with them. So now, this was the order. This is the feedback. Check your order. If they are wrong, it's okay. The idea is that you look around, and if there is any student not writing, just with your finger, you got to write. So once the student gets used to being active, it doesn't go back. Now, this is the order. Remember, put this on a piece of paper so that you are reading it without going, etc. You can see the word teacher here. So copy this on a separate sheet of paper. Now the opening task. Ready? Let's read the instructions. Write what meaning your mind makes next to each sentence using the words in red below. So let's see. What people enjoy doing is called likes and dislikes. When we are talking about the kind of person, we say personality. So everybody read number 1 and number 2. Is it likes, dislikes, or personality? You write. Okay? Now you tell them, let's check. I am very spontaneous. That's my personality. So spontaneous, before you start to explain the meaning of the word, it's saying what kind of person you are. I'm spontaneous. That's the personality. We spend hours talking and laughing. That's your likes or dislikes. Let's try it again, okay? I will put 2 sentences again, and you think if those sentences are talking about the personality of the person or the person's likes and dislikes. Who will write these? The students. Okay. Read number 1, read number 2. And what does your mind say about each sentence? Which one is a like or dislike? Which one is a personality? And again, after you gave them a couple of seconds, put the answers. He loves spending time on the computer. That's his likes. I am obsessed with technology and media. That's my personality. Let's do it one more time, okay? Again, read number 1 and read number 2. Which one is your likes and dislikes? Which one is your personality? One of my favorite things to do is wake up really early. I am down to earth. So, one of my favorite things to do is wake up really early. That's my likes or dislikes. If you say I don't. I am down to earth is my personality. So, to sum up, this is now the teacher talking. When we read, our minds does this. If we read something and our mind says this is what people enjoy doing, we are talking about their likes. If we say this is the kind of person the person is, that's their personality. So this was the first learning. Now, you don't need to do this in every lesson, but because it's the first lesson, it's good to remember how a simple sentence works in English. Okay? And it's only 3 to 5 minutes. So the basic structure of a simple sentence in English is like this. The first is always the who or what. You can say subject, but there is no meaning. Subject does not create meaning. It's the who and what that creates meaning. The second is the action or the verb. The third is the who or what. You can say object, but it doesn't have a meaning until you put who or what. Then there's the how, the where, and the when. It's the teacher talking here. So let's put a sentence. I love to do new things. I love, what do you love? To do new things. So even though it's an infinitive verb, it's making the sense of what? Let's try again. One of my favorite things to do. Have you noticed that we are using the same sentences from here? Have you noticed that? Because when we say the sentence again, to do this, they are now looking at a sentence that is familiar from a few minutes ago. Is the verb. Wake up really early. Even though you might think wake up is a verb, but if I ask you, what is one of your favorite things to do? You say wake up really early. So it's no longer working as a verb. Now it's working as a what? That's how a simple sentence works in English. Now, to make sure you got it, notice I gave you the work alone. The work alone. Write the details of the 3 sentences in the sentence. By the way, there's the word organizer here somewhere. Let me just pull it out for you. Okay, there it is. So, Let's do this. I am down to earth. Where will you put the I? Where will you put the am, etc.? This is the organizer of the simple sentence in English. If our students mentally have that organizer, they will be able to comprehend when they're listening and speaking, and reading, and they will be able to produce when they are speaking and writing, because this is how English is working. I am very spontaneous. He loves spending time on the computer. We spend hours talking and laughing. Do you notice that we didn't make new sentences, but we used the sentences that we did in the opening? That's the reason. So when it comes here, it's familiar. After they finish, we will check. I am down to earth. I know that this might sound strange to you. You all agree that the I is the who. You all agree that am is the verb. Down to earth is a what? What are you? That's the question. What are you? Down to earth. Okay. I am very spontaneous. I is the who. Or the contraction of am is the verb. You're what? Very spontaneous. He loves spending time on the computer. He is the who. Loves is the verb. He loves what? Don't allow the students to say one or two words. Always make them say all the words. That's how they will build the mental rule for the detail. He loves what? Spending time on the computer. And finally, we is the who. Spend is the action. Spend what? The answer is not ours. The answer is all of this. Spend what? Hours talking and laughing. Spend what? Hours talking and laughing. So now the students are reviewing how a simple sentence works. But if we start to have all the students in the kingdom start to do this at a very early level, then we don't have to do it in grade 11 anymore. That's why I'm putting it in grade 11 on the assumption that the students cannot do it. So you can move higher if your students can already do this, okay? Now, how to tell if the sentence is talking about personality or likes and dislikes. Again, as I said, when I projected this, for some reason, some of the parts are missing. So when you get this PowerPoint and you see that there are some words missing, please click on the box and see if it goes a little bit higher. Okay, ready? All right. How to tell if the sentence is talking about personality or likes or dislikes. First, you need to find the who or what at the beginning of the sentence. Again, the missing part is here. Second, so this is the process. For me to comprehend the sentence, if it's about personality or likes or dislikes, I've got to find the who or what. Then, I find the main action or the verb. Then, third, I find the who, the what, the how, the where, the when that follow. This is the one that follows. And in this case, it's a what. Once my brain does this, and after they learn it, it starts to become automatic. If the what is describing the who, then it's a personality. If the what here is describing the who, then it's a personality. Okay? So this is the process. Remember, it is slow at the beginning, but once they do it 2 or 3 times, it becomes automatic. They don't even need to think about it. And yesterday, one of your colleagues mentioned something that is the most important. This is visible thinking. Let me write the words. Visible thinking. So now we can see the thinking process, not just the answer. In the past, we were only interested in the answer. But if the answer is wrong, we don't know how they were thinking. If we focus on the visible thinking and spend more time on it, the answers will always be correct. But if we're only telling students your answer is wrong, your answer is right, and we don't know their thinking process, we don't know why they're doing it. So if the student and the teachers use visible thinking, it improves. So one more time, we find the who or what, we find the verb, we find the next detail. In this case, it's a what. If this what describes the who, then it's a personality. Let's go to a second sentence. He loves spending time on the computer. So now, what do we do first? You remember? We find the what or who at the beginning of the sentence. Then we find the verb or the action. Next, we find the detail. All right? And in this case, what is the detail? Spending time on the computer. And again, please forgive me for some reason the things shifted around. Now, this what? This what? Is it? If the what, is it telling about the action or is it telling about the who? The what? Spending time on the computer. Is this about he or is this about loves? If it is about the action, then it's a like or dislike. So let's say he doesn't love spending time on the computer. Therefore, the what is talking about the action, about the first who, not about the who, about his action. I love what? Spending time on the computer. So the spending time on the computer is about the action. This is about likes or dislikes. Now we give the students, go to the book. We're using the book, right? Here's the book. Find and mark sentences that talk about personalities, A, or dislikes, B, in the three passages. Do we want the students to read from here to here aloud? No. We want them to learn to find the personality and dislike. By the way, everybody, if the students learn to do this, they will be able to do part of the reading comprehension in IELTS and TOEFL. So don't use the word skim and scan by themselves. They are not skimming and scanning. They are skimming and scanning for sentences that talk about personality and likes and dislikes. That's all. Everything else is irrelevant. All right? Now, they are working alone. The teacher is going around. How do you know if the students are working? If they are marking the sentences. All you need to do is look. If they are not making marks, they are not doing anything. This is the active part. Let me show it to you on one of them. Let's find and mark sentences that talk about personality in blue and likes and dislikes in red. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. I like to set challenges for myself. That's a like and dislike. I am also a very straightforward person. That's a personality. This is where you give them the feedback on the screen. Let's look at this person. Likes and dislikes. I spend hours each day on the web and playing computer games. The who is the I. Spend is the action. Spend what? Hours each day on the web and playing. The word spend, the word hours each day is talking about the action. Therefore, it's a like or dislike. But here, I'm a pretty funny guy. A pretty funny guy is not talking about the am, it's talking about the who. Therefore, that's the personality. Let's do number 3. So you notice all of these are from your books. If I had to describe myself, etc., I especially love a quiet morning. I especially love a quiet morning. Is that your like or dislike? Or is it your personality? So here we have something to talk about. It's your personality because you like you like quietness. It's your personality. But I give lots of support and encouragement. This is what you like to do or not like to do. Now, my fellow educators, does it matter if we change the text in the book? It doesn't matter anymore because it's not the text that is important. It's what your student can do with the text that is important. And how many periods have we got? 100? 125? This is what our students will be able to do by the end of the year. But we haven't finished. Let's go to task number 3. How likes and dislike personality help us make an inference. So you remember, we not only want the fact, but we want to make an inference. Like this, demonstrate. If a person's personality is, Sally is a good listener. That's her personality. What can we infer? What can we infer? People like to talk to her because her personality is she's a good listener. Let's talk about another one. I love quiet mornings. What can we infer? This person probably does not live in a crowded city. So what we want the students to learn to do is to take the fact or the opinion and then make an inference from that. For those of you out there listening to me today, is this a skill we need in IELTS or not? It's there in the books. It's there in any book. Now, of course, we can redesign books to make them look a little better, to work a little better, but the idea is that they are already there. But we should not miss the boat and say, the students must understand. It's the student must develop a skill of finding the fact and inferring from that fact. Now we're going to ask the student, let's do one more demo, okay? Let's talk about likes and dislikes. I like to set challenges for myself. That's what I like. Good. What can we infer? What can we infer? This person will do something he or she has never done before. What's something like read one book a week? So not all the students will make the same inference. This is what inference means. But in TOEFL and IELTS, they will give you an A, B, C, D for you to infer something from what you read, and only one inference seems logical. Let's try it again. I'm always hanging out with my friends. That's your likes. I'm always hanging out with my friends. What can we infer? My friends and I have barbecues, we go for long drives, we watch movies together, we play games. This is what I can infer from I always hang out with my friends. So now I would like all of you to do this. Instead of inferring by yourselves, I gave you the inferences. Read each one and say what is the most probable inference for number 1 to 4. Write the letter of the inference here. But in classroom, make the students speak or write, not A, B, C, D. But if you are, excuse me, if you are pressed for time, then do A, B, C, D. It's always better if the student speaks or reads. or copies. So let me give you 20 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. What is the inference for each one? If you want to do visible thinking, you will ask the students to find the who or the what, find the verb, and find the what detail after it. And this one means it's a like or a dislike. Here you found the who, Fatma, you found the verb, and you found the what that comes after it. This one is talking about Fatma, therefore it's a personality. You can ask them to do this before they find the answer, if you have time. This will create what we call visible thinking, and you as a teacher, when you're looking at every student, you know which person is having problems. So, shall we check our answers? Shall we check our answers? Okay. He spends 4 hours a day on the computer. Notice which one would be the best one. Technology would be something this person would do. Fatma is a very honest girl, so this person would probably always tell the truth. Ahmed likes to be outdoors, therefore going camping is something that this person would do. Khalid is adventurous. This person will probably do some bungee jumping. And I will say no thank you. All right? Now, let's go to the language interaction. Remember, in language interaction is when the students sit in pairs or groups and they use what they have learned with each other. So let's see. In pairs, tell each other 2 sentences and reply with an inference. You can use the words and sentences from page 6 and 7, or you can make your own. But remember, they need to learn the tool first. So here's the tool. The students are sitting in pairs. You have 15 pairs. This student went, I like to make people laugh. You can copy the sentence from the book or you can make your own, right? What will her friend answer? I think you have a lot of friends. Let's try it again. Not all the students will be saying the same thing. This is the beauty of language interaction. You want your students to talk? Well, they're not going to talk at all if they're only answering questions to the teachers. So this student said, I never tell a lie. And what will her partner infer? You are very honest, etc. Okay? You got that? But they must learn the tool first. You can't just go in and say, let's do this, and you prepared 2 hours yesterday. It will fail. I will keep repeating. Learn the tool ourselves first. Then help the students learn the tool, and then finally use the tool to help them learn. Do you remember what you saw with those 2 girls talking to each other yesterday? 7, green, building. And the other girl found the picture of the building and put it in the right square. And then the first student went, right, your turn. That's a tool. And by the way, those tools were learned by the students within 8 sessions. So we use the same tool over and over because if you remember yesterday, you saw 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That means they already did the tool with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It was not an unfamiliar tool. Remember, the tool must be familiar. What they are doing is new. We cannot put an unfamiliar tool with new. One has to be familiar, one has to be new for learning. So, in which level of voice? The students need to be speaking in pair voices. Now, how do we do this? How will we do this? Before I continue to the focal point, we started something, and at some point, this needs to be done. And it is my fervent desire and dream to make a video of each tool, how it is working with all the social skills, not just the language interaction, but the learning tools as well. And then it becomes easier for teachers to learn it, and it becomes easier for teachers to explain it to the students by showing it to them. So imagine, instead of trying to teach the students this tool by talking to everybody, you just play a video of somebody doing this tool, and it will be learned. Now, we finished the language interaction. Let's go to the focal point. Ready? If you look at the focal point in the videos or on the website, you will see that this focal point is for Mega Goal Book 3, Unit 1, Lesson 1, and the focal point task can take 6 to 10 minutes. What did we tell the students to do? Copy sentences from the passage that expresses likes and dislikes and personality. Write next to each sentence what you think it infers. You don't just give them the text, you give them the writing layout, which is on the second page, like this. So, this is the text that they will read, and where will they write? They will copy a sentence from the text. They will say it's a like or a dislike, and then they write the inference that that sentence can make. Now, different students will copy maybe different sentences. You can say copy 2 sentences, or you can say copy as many sentences as you can in 3 minutes. It's up to you as the designer. Now, likes and dislikes are for the sentences, but the inference does not have to be the same from every student. This is the focal point. Can you see it? That's the focal point. If your student can find in a text, this is just after 40 minutes of learning. Now, in the beginning, it might take 2 periods or 3 periods to learn it because they need to learn the tool. But after they master it, the future learning will become faster. And we are happy to say that there are hundreds of teachers who are already doing this. And we hope you join us. Okay. Now we come to the part of how do we create assessment? We finished 2 lessons. How do we make an assessment? I am going to make your lives very, very easy right now. Are you ready to make your life easier? So work smart, not hard. Let's look at the MLD again. This is the learning part. These are the focal points. We didn't have time for the performance task, but if you go to the website, to the YouTube, you will see examples. We want to focus on the framework for design. Do we have all the focal points or not? Is this a focal point? Is this a focal point? Good. How do we create an assessment plan? This is what you do. You take all the focal points of the week or the 2 weeks or of the unit, and we put them in an assessment booklet. I will explain more. Did we do this before? If you want to put it in the assessment, what will you change? If you want to put this in your assessment booklet, what will you change? Just change these sentences. Where will you get the new sentences from? You can copy them from previous units. So let's say the student learned English in Unit 1 and 2, and you're doing this in Unit 3, you can write sentences from Unit 1 and 2, but of course, with the 1 or 2 times a year, or every time, or 10 times, just change the sentence. When the student goes to the test, they have seen the tool before, they know what to do, but the sentences are new for them. Let me show this to you again, okay? If they already did this, what will you change? What will you change? Don't change the layout. Don't change the instructions. Just bring a new text like this. By the way, all exams like TOEFL, IELTS, MAPS, etc., they work the same way. They assume that the student has the mental process and they just put a new text. That's all. Let me show you another one. Now, sometimes we are obliged, like we are told, put one true or false. Do you just put true or false, or do you include the learning? Let me show you a traditional, a conventional true or false with visible thinking, but done in the MLD way, okay? Now, I put the sentences before the text just to demonstrate. You can put these 4 sentences under the text. Let's read the instructions first. Underline the details in each sentence and write the correct detailed word above each. Let's do it. Tom is the who, gets up is the action, at 10 a.m. on Sundays is the when. Good. Then read the text and compare the details with the text. Let's see. On Sunday is the when, Tom is the who, gets up is the action, at 10 o'clock is the when. Are the details in the text the same as the details in the true or false sentence? If all the details are the same, then it is true. If one detail is not the same, then it's wrong. So we don't just put true or false haphazardly. We don't just put a paragraph and then start to write sentences and hope that the students gets it. This is reflecting the learning. They learned how to find the details. Let's look at another one and see how complex it can get. Number 5. Tom and his sister. That's the who. Eat is the action. Before playing tennis is the when. This is the when. So to show you how it can be higher level, but still with details. Let's see. He has breakfast at 11:30 and then he telephones his mother in Scotland in the afternoon at 1. So this is the when. In the afternoon at 1. Tom is the who. Plays is the action. Tennis with his sister is the who. After that is the when. They is the who. Eat dinner in a restaurant. So we can see the details in number 5 do not correspond with the details in the text. Because here, at 1 o'clock, he plays tennis with his sister, and then they eat dinner in a restaurant after they play tennis. So Tom and his sister do not eat before they play tennis. It's false. If we start to do this, the assessment will become scientifically designed, not haphazardly designed. We do not put anything in the test until we can show what they learn. What did the students learn here? They learn how to find details. Good. The true or false will be on the details. If the students learn to find cause and effect, what will happen? What will happen if it's cause and effect? Then the sentence here should be cause or effect, and then the sentences in the text is cause and effect. If one cause or one effect does not meet the cause and effect in the sentence, then it's false. Do not design the test haphazardly. Let me show you another example, all right? Okay. Now, normally, I look at teachers and ask them, how do you design a reading comprehension? Most teachers tell me, first we look for a text. Please stop doing that. Don't look for the text first. Look for what they learned first, like this. Did they learn how to find, excuse me, did the students learn how to find a what detail, yes or no? If they did, we're going to put 2 detailed questions. For what? Why did we say 2 and not 1? Because with 1, you might accidentally get it right or wrong. But if you have 2 detailed questions and you get both right, we know you know. If you get both wrong, we know you don't know. If you get 1 right, 1 wrong, we still don't know. So it's better to have 3 questions. But because of time, we put 2. Did they learn how to find the when? Yes, we're going to put 2 detailed questions for when. Let me just check to see if anything from the administration. Oh, there are a lot of questions. Okay, I will stop in around 5 minutes to take your questions, okay? All right. If they learned how to find the how, we're going to put how questions. If they learn how to find the who, we're going to put who question. If they learn to find the cause and effect, we are going to put cause and effect questions. So if we have 1,000 teachers teaching the same grade at the same time, all of them will be asking the same questions, but on any text. We get the text after we decide what questions we want to ask and not before. To become an engineer of learning, this is the approach. Let me show you one more example. One more example. Look at these 3 questions. What happened first in the story? It's asking about a sequence. What did Andy think after 10 minutes? The skill is still sequence. What happened when Jill came back? It's still a sequence. So we know that the students today are going to learn, if this is the focal point, are going to learn how to find the sequence using first, next, after, finally. They're going to learn how to make sequence using after 10 minutes, before 10 minutes, and they're going to learn how to make sequence using adverbial clause, like when Jill came back, before you submit your paper. How do you put it in the test? Just change the story with the same specification, but ask the same questions. What happened? Not necessarily first, second. What did, let's say, the frog eat before lunch? What happened when the frog jumped? You're asking the same skill question, but on a new text. This is a skill called sequence, and we want to focus on their ability to find sequence. Once the students have mastered sequence, you can now, in the test, put this in your assessment booklet in order to have the end of the year assessment before you even start the year. I know it's a lot of work, but anything that you build for a purpose that is good is a lot of work. Yes, it will take time, but I do hope that today you will be convinced that you need to stop teaching and you need to design learning for your students. Teaching means talking to the students, telling them. Design learning means creating tools and tasks that your student will actively use in order to become learners. Don't forget that you can watch some of these lessons on the YouTube channel. And I heard that there are lots of questions, so I would like to give the floor to Mr. Badri to hear those questions. Can you hear me? Mr. Badri, we cannot hear you. I think now we can.
Just a second.
Yes.
Yeah. Eli, thanks a lot for such a wonderful presentations. There is a lot of appreciation on the feedback, and I have some questions. But before I announce the questions, just I wanna update you that please you are kindly requested to register for this and for the registration. The link is on the chat, and also do the evaluation for our symposium. The first questions, Eli, can we get teachers?
May I interrupt you? I have something even better.
Yeah.
If you send me all the questions, in 1 week's time, I will write answers or make videos for some of the most important questions, send them back to you, and Mrs. Fatma and yourself and Dr. Maha can provide them as links to the teachers. But I will answer the questions now. But if we don't have time to answer all the questions, I love getting questions from the teachers because that makes me think and learn more.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Okay, the first questions, can we get a teacher's guide for this design or any references about such a topic? We need to answer.
Look, you need to work with maybe 500 books. There is no one book that can answer all these questions. This is from a lot of learning and experience. But if God willing, at some point, I can produce at least pamphlets to explain the system. But to actually make one book that can answer all these questions by a human being, I think it's going to take lots of time. So what you are seeing here is a design that came from experiences and reading. And let me just share with you one experience that you cannot find in any book.
And I have another question. I have a number of questions, please.
Yeah, but let me talk about experience. I sat in the classroom in the UAE in a public school, 300 periods, writing down every 5 minutes what I see and hear. You can't find that in a book. And I am trying to share those experiences with you.
Thanks. Okay. The second question, in the opening task, should we give the students some time to read the sentence before doing the task?
Yes. I mean, again, it depends on the level of the students. For example, if the students are low level, before you do the task, you tell the students, read the sentences aloud to each other in pairs. Not read silently. Read the sentences to each other in pairs aloud using a low voice. This way, they became familiar with the sentences before we started. But if the level of the students are high, you probably don't need that. So again, a lot is adjusted for the uniqueness of the student and the uniqueness of the situation. But yes, we can give them time to read, but why not read actively? Instead of one student reading all, why don't they read the sentences aloud to each other in pairs? It makes them, give them heightened attention. Yes.
Okay, I have 2 questions.
We have 100 tools for each.
Excellent. Eli, There is another question as what about using the picture in lesson to introduce the topics and activated students schema? Another question that's relevant, how we utilize the audios that comes with the book in the reading text.
All right, let's start with the first one, the pictures. If you remember, I said when you use a tool, you can use reading, you can use listening, and you can use seeing. Now, when you say introduce, do you mean you are talking or the students, all of them are doing? So if you are talking, it's not student-centered. But if I changed it and I say, everybody look at the pictures. Remember, I said there are 100 tools, and because of the time limitation, you only saw one example. And one example does not begin to cover the concept. Let me give you a tool very quickly. Look at the pictures, or the picture from the book. In 1 minute, write as many words for things you can see in the picture in 1 minute. So now the student is really looking carefully at the picture. If the student is not actively speaking or writing or doing something, then the introduction is just talking. All right? So yes, we can use the picture as long as we create it in a tool where the students are doing something that they can. Continue. The listening. We can use the listening as part of the learning or as part of the focal point. So in the focal point, we might say, listen to the text, copy 2 sentences that show personality from what you hear. We cannot do comprehension about everything in every lesson. We focus on the skill, we build up the skills at the end of 50 periods or 100 periods per year. The students have an ability to transfer rather than to remember only.
Okay, Eli?
Yes.
There are 2 requests. They want a summary of this excellent webinar. Another thing, also they recommend to give them to give learners a demo when they creating assessment plan.
All right.
Is it possible to?
All right. Number 1, as I said, you can see a lot of demos here at each grade level, from WeCan 1 to Mega Goal 6 or 5. Okay? But they are few and samples, and every piece of learning takes time, my brothers and sisters. Learning cannot happen in 2 minutes. We need patience. You need to say, I need a year. Number 2, Mr. Badri and the team and Dr. Maha, we have talked about helping teachers create an assessment plan. And at some point in the very near future, with the approval of His Excellency and with the approval of CEL, we can start something called How to Design an Assessment Booklet. Why? Let me show you in a very quick way. This is your assessment booklet. It's all the focal points, but we just change the content. We keep the same tool, we keep the same layout, we keep the same instruction, just change the content that they will be dealing with. What is the content? They can be dealing with hearing, they can be dealing with reading, or they can be dealing with images. Because of the lack of time, I did not even give you something on writing or on speaking. But you could see that in the interaction, right? So the booklet, the assessment booklet, is not the tool, but what the skill that the tool will be looking for is in. So designing an assessment framework is essential for changing the direction of education. All right? Hopefully, we will be able to do something soon. If you want me to summarize the whole thing, this is the summary of MLD. You have objectives. You design You don't say we will test the student. That doesn't mean anything. The way I will test them is different from 999 other teachers. We agree on the tool that we will use to test the objective. Now, the lesson plan does not have to be equal everywhere, but the tool that we will reach has to be the same. If we tie all of these together and the students learn, then is it possible for us to give the student a picture and say, write a story for this picture based on everything that you have learned? This is a performance task. And with the time available, we were not able to do more than this. And please accept my apologies for the lack of time. We love to have more time. I love to work with you. We need maybe 60 hours in 1 year, just 1 year, to develop this to the next stage. And we take each one of them and we break it apart until it becomes what you are looking for. This is the summary.
Okay, thanks a lot, Eli. And I leave the talk now for Dr. Maha to say a few words before concluding.
Yeah. And remember, if you have any pressing questions, I would love to receive those questions and write answers for them, okay?
Okay.
Go ahead. Thank you very much, everybody.
Dr. Maha will say something, Eli.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Dr.
you
Maha?
very much, Eli, for this wonderful presentation. We cannot express our extreme appreciation and gratefulness for this wonderful webinar, and we are hoping for future webinars for our teachers, since we got a lot of feedback on this. If our teachers love to contact you, please, will you show your contact information now so they can contact you and follow your Twitter account, LinkedIn?
All right.
For the future.
Yeah.
Eli, of course, is known as an author and the previous CEL director and a trainer in many countries, recently in Dubai, and also an educational consultant. And we would love to have such webinars even in our private schools and for the companies and publishers in Saudi Arabia. It is such a wonderful opportunity to have you with us, and we thank you very much for this wonderful webinar. Thank you for the National Institute for Educational Professional Development for providing also all the logistics for this webinar, whom we couldn't have done this without them. My appreciation to all of you. Thank you, teachers, and thank you, Mrs. Pop.
Can I say one more word?
Yes, sure.
First of all, you know how much I appreciate all of you. But even more than that, I know that you know how much I love working with the teachers in KSA. And this is a mission rather than a job, okay? So my appreciation and my regards to His Excellency, the Deputy, and everybody in the team, and all the wonderful teachers and places that I have visited in the kingdom. I look forward to visiting you again soon. Thank you so much, Dr. Maha, Mr. Badri, Mrs. Fatma, and all the wonderful teachers out there.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And have a great weekend.
Thank you very much, Eli. All the sessions were so engaging and informative. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, and all the thanks to the team leader, Dr. Maha, and Mr. Abdullah, and all the team. Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Hope to work with you again.
Goodbye and good luck.
Bye.
Goodbye.